All right. Well, today on Why Is Everyone Yelling? We have Amy Mockbee on the show. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so what grade or what age are you teaching right now?
Oh, I'm teaching 3-year-olds.
Okay.
3-year-old turning four.
And how
Yes. I've
how
been
long
doing
have
that
you
for
been doing
12
that?
years. Yeah, 12 years.
Okay,
hmm
nice. I
Yeah,
have so many questions as I have a 3-year-old right now. It's so different experiencing the preschool years your fourth time around than your first time around.
absolutely. Absolutely it is. I know that from my own experience too. It's every child is different. And every time you go through it is different.
I was just thinking this though the other day, so you can tell me the answer. Can you preschool teachers tell when it's a fourth kid or third kid?
Here's what I think we can tell, and this is not always the case.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you always have that outlier who is not in the equation. You can often tell when they are the younger sibling or
Uh-huh.
the only sibling. If there's only one child, you can often tell if they're the oldest or the youngest. Not as often the middle.
Yeah.
I'm a third child myself of four, so I always feel like, oh, I can spot a third child all the time. But I've been wrong before. But yes, you can definitely tell who has siblings, who has older siblings, who has younger siblings. You can usually pick that up pretty quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember with my first, it was like, he's such a leader. He's a good listener. Like all the praise, all the first kid praise. And I just like, oh yeah, I'm doing a great job. And I also at the same time was like, well, you don't see him at home, right? He's holding it together at school and then lets loose at home.
Absolutely.
And then my second, I didn't hear much from the teacher, but everything was always fine. And then we really started getting into issues with my third and my fourth, just as far as like playing super physically at school and being like really a little too aggressive, probably for a school environment. Like aggressive in the way that you hang out with your brothers, but not in a way that you should at school. And so navigating that is hard because, you have to teach your kids that's not appropriate for school, yet they're still really young and they're used to seeing that being okay with their brothers at home because boys in their nature wrestle a lot.
Of course. Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And I also think for some kids also when they're younger siblings, they sometimes just feel more ready and more comfortable to go to school. They know, right? Going to all the pickups and the drop-offs and all those kinds of things, they know about school. So they're a little less timid about going to school. And sometimes it's just their personality, right? Some kids are
Right.
just all out there, nothing holding nothing back. This is who I am. And that's okay too. But yeah, it does. That's the beauty of going to school. I mean, I know, we're always talking about that, Emily and I, with work and play, is that's really part of the learning process. That's why preschool is so important. It's the time when they're really starting to learn routines. They're starting to understand what it means to be in school. They've really never separated, especially now after coming out of what we've just come out of, how to behave at home and how to behave
Mm-hmm.
at school. And we're seeing that this year more than ever because most kids haven't had much school experience or even play groups or play dates. I mean, it's been very limited. So it's a whole new animal this year for sure.
I bet it is because I mean, these kids, especially the new threes, they really spent a good majority of their life during COVID.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we're finding it's a very like much longer learning curve of how to line up, how to sit on the rug for a story time, how to think about personal space, exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But if they've never been in a room full of peers where they have several peers, kids their age, plus toys, plus all the stimulation, this can be a really rocky transition in a regular year. But this year especially, it feels very stimulating to them.
Okay, I'm curious your thoughts on this then. I know that somebody had asked this question a while back. I think that the time their child was probably approaching two, and they were at this stage where it's like, we haven't had any socialization for our child because of COVID. And I think probably some nerves with going to school and all that. So, as the teacher, what kind of information can you give a parent who might be nervous about that situation?
That is definitely the biggest thing we're hearing this year, especially is parents are worried, not about, that they didn't get academics, maybe with the older grades they are, but with the preschoolers, they're really worried about their socialization and that they missed something. And I have two ways of looking at this. There's no stopping a child from learning how to socialize, whether they're in school or they're not. They're wired to socialize. So even what they do within your home and within your family counts. So that shouldn't be discounted. They definitely have been socialized. They have been around people, even if they're around one person or one main caregiver, that is still interaction, and that's get their brain and help learn, socialize, how to talk, how to communicate. Now, of course, when they're home, there's a different kind of feeling where they're more relaxed. They can maybe get away with a little bit of stuff that you can't get away with in a classroom. So that's the piece, that's the difference there. So I always try to reassure parents, it's not that they're not socialized. They most definitely are. Even though it's true, the little ones we're teaching this year have hardly been in a group setting. I mean, it's very limited. I mean, some of them maybe went to camps this summer or things like that, but they are socialized. But it's really helping them get ready for the routines that are happening in a classroom, right, in a school. And so that's a different thing. So first, take heart that they definitely got their socialization. It was different, but children are very fast learners. Everybody, you've probably heard that a lot, but they are. So it won't take them long, but it may take them a little longer than usual. So I would guess by November, December, these kiddos are going to be like very settled in, and like this is an old routine to them, especially if they're struggling entering the school setting right now, because we're still so early in the school year. There's still a lot of bumps in the road, whether it's bathroom accidents or pushing or being rough or calling out or whatever it may be, crying for mom or dad. We're seeing a lot of that, but teachers know how to work with kids and families to get through that, and they're going to all adjust beautifully. It's just going to take a little time.
Yeah. I have spent years with the hard preschool drop off, and I think I'm a little calloused to it now. Like, oh, it still breaks my heart to see my kid crying, but like those first few years are so hard when you're like dropping off a kid who's just like screaming bloody murder, and you're like, is this child abuse? Like, should I walk away? Like, I'm abandoning him.
I know.
So talk to those parents who are feeling like, when they have those drop offs.
Yeah, so this is a big one too. We get this every year. I mean, this isn't abnormal that we have people asking about transitions and kind of that separation that kids have, that they get so upset. And P.S., parents get so upset, right? Just what you're talking about. Even if you've been through it, it still breaks your heart a little bit. I mean, I one of my kids was a crier too. Like, it's really, really hard. Here's what I would say. This is something that I know that we'll talk about today is really using your teachers as a resource and as a partner in helping this transition. So if you know that your little one always has a hard time separating, or most of the time has a hard time separating, anytime you can give a teacher a heads up on that is going to help, right? So you can talk about it, and the teachers can give you some tips and tricks that work for their school setting. But I always say, with parents especially, a couple of things you can do. And at this point in the year, if you're still having a child who's crying and really having a hard time separating, now it's like almost become their routine, right? So most kids will kind of go through a phase and it drops off. Some kids will keep crying. Some kids will cry in the beginning, stop, then start crying again when they realize they have to keep going to school.
Yeah.
Like, hang on, I didn't know this was going to keep going. But great thing to do with them is leading up to going to school, and even the night before, if you start hearing some things about not wanting to go to school, really important to keep it as positive as you can. I mean, kids they pick up on our moods, they pick up on our worries, they pick up on our stresses. So anything you can do to put on a brave face for your kiddo and reassure them, even if you're nervous too, that it's going to be okay, that school's a fun place, school's a great place for them. Try to focus on the things that are beyond the saying goodbye part. Like if you know they're going to have music that day, if you know they especially love the playground and it's a beautiful day, try to start thinking about the positive things to get them over that hump so that they can, stop focusing on the goodbye part. And also reassuring them that you know when to come back. There's a plan for pickup, whether it's going to be you or a caregiver or a partner, saying, this is our plan. I'm going to be there. I promise I'm going to be there. And your teacher is there to help you. And, helping the teacher know things, just that, my little one's coming in nervous today, because some kids don't cry, but they do act really nervous, right? And sometimes we as teachers don't always have all those nuances with the little ones. Anything a parent can tell us that will help us get to know your child. It's not even oversharing, but just saying, this is my child. When they get nervous, they might sit by themselves for a while. When they feel like it's overwhelming, they may need to go look at a book. They may come to you. There may be a certain phrase they use. And this year, especially, I know in my class, they're starting to wear masks, and it's hard when we can't see their whole face. So I'm really looking for parents to tell me those tidbits, and so that I can, kind of skip ahead. So if I can't read the face, which I feel pretty confident doing, having been a teacher for, 25 years, I can usually read a face. I can read if it's I have to go to the bathroom face, or it's I want my mom face. It's a little harder now. So anything we can do to partner with the parents to help us understand these guys as individuals really is helping, especially now with these transitions.
That is so hard. We were gone for a week because we traveled home to Indiana, and we came back, and then my son had a cold, and so we waited to send him back. And then when he went back, my youngest, he just school is scary. My teachers are scary. I mean, he was hysterical when I was dropping him off, and I was thinking, can we wait to put this mask on his face until he's done having this meltdown? Because I couldn't handle the thought of you're crying and you're freaking out, but let me also put a mask on your face right now. And I think they waited. He didn't have one on when I pulled away.
We'll sometimes sit outside with them.
Yeah.
Certainly give them their space if they need it. I mean, they're so little. So it's really important that they feel safe and they feel like the teacher is there to take care of them too, right? Yeah. When their parents can't be there. And that's a big, learning those school behaviors is seeing teachers as caregivers too. I can't say enough about that with preschool teachers. We really do want them to feel safe and they can come to us and tell us what they're feeling or tell us how they're doing. But we also really rely on the parents, because sometimes we don't hear things. And so the parents might hear something. So I'm just always so grateful when a parent reaches out and says, I'm not sure if you knew about this, but this happened on the playground, or, they came home talking about this that they saw with another friend, and, just trying to give you, can you give me more information? And we do the same, when we hear or see things, we'll reach out and say, can you help us understand this a little bit better?
Yeah. I'll stop giving real life examples and we'll move on to our tips. But my last thing is also last week, my 4-year-old, my one that's a little bit older, is gets in the car and he's like, I did not have a good day. I made bad choices. So I was waiting for the email to come from the teacher. And then I got an email from the teacher that just said something about how I might want to get his eyes checked because he was looking, squinting. And I was like, oh. So then I brought up what he said, and she was like, oh yeah, I wasn't even going to mention it, but X, Y, and Z happened. He was wrestling and then he pushed someone, and he, we figured it out, but I'll let you know if it, becomes a continuous problem. But I was like, yes, thank you. I'm glad, because you can't report every little thing, but I do realize that when there's an ongoing issue, I need to know. But I was also super proud of my son for being, I don't know if he came to me because he thought the teacher was going to come to me, or he just needed to get it out. But
yeah, so it's the self-awareness that he was showing you, that he knew, oh, that didn't feel great today, but there's always tomorrow.
Yeah. Well,
that's what we say, tomorrow.
Yeah. Tomorrow's a new day. That was the other podcast name for this show. We decided on Why Is Everyone Yelling, but I kept thinking a new day, because whenever my kids melt down at night, that's what I always say. I'm like, a new day tomorrow, a new day tomorrow. But I kind of felt it sounded too new agey or something.
Well, they're both perfect names for parenting. I'll tell you that much.
All right. Well,
I can relate to both.
Yeah. Let's talk about parenting and working with the teachers for support and supporting one another. So do you have some tips that we can talk through there?
Absolutely. So, the first thing is something I've already kind of mentioned is really making sure that you're seeing the teachers as a partner. So I always go into every school year using that language right from the get-go with parents, that I see this as a partnership, especially if you have a little one in preschool, but this is true in elementary school too. Seeing them as a partner is so important, in that you see them as someone who's going to work with you and work with your child to, have them do the best they can, not be perfect, not always doing the right thing or making the best choices. But if you really can start to see your teachers, and some people do this naturally, but some people, and I get, as a teacher myself, I sometimes would go into a school thinking like, oh, I'm feeling a little nervous, I better put on my best, I'm going to put my best face forward, like, oh no, we're okay, we didn't have a meltdown this morning, like, no, there's no problem getting her shoes on to get her here, but the more I, learned as a teacher, and the more that I learned as a parent, I see it more and more that, teachers are people too. They understand, and seeing them as a partner, you're helping each other. Really, it's us be a better teacher to your child, and it's also help, we can then in return support your child and help them succeed and feel comfortable and safe in school. I mean, my biggest goal is that children love school. It's the biggest part. We say this, my husband and I say this about our own children whenever there's an issue. Like, as soon as they don't want to go to school and they don't like school, then we have a problem. Like, it's okay if they don't do well in the math test. It's okay if they get an argument on the playground. But if they don't want to go to school, then I've got a problem. And that's the same as a teacher. And Emily and I talk about this all the time. Like, that's our biggest job when they're in preschool, is to have them love school. So partnering with your teacher as a parent is so important. And just really, even when it's getting rough, because sometimes I think parents do want to kind of gloss over the stuff that they know, right? Like, parents, we know our kids, like, your children better than anyone. We always tell parents, you are their first teacher, like way before us, right? From the minute they're born, you are their first teacher. And so you know them better than anyone. So, you want to put the most positive light on your child always. But if there is an area where you feel like you're struggling as a parent, managing something, even if it's, if it's tantrums, or if it's transitions, or if it's separation, or, whatever it may be, or, just, you're not sure how to manage some things or how they're doing in school, teachers are an amazing resource. And that's one of our tips too, is when you are really at your wit's end and you're kind of like, I do not know what to do next with this kid, go to your teachers. And, they can give you so many tips, whether it's a book to read, or a podcast to listen to, or, a specialist to talk to, or just to give you some reassurance that this actually sounds pretty okay to me. This seems like a pretty normal thing for this age. Because sometimes I think, Emily and I we're so deep into child development and parenting and being with preschoolers and elementary age kids, that we sometimes take for granted that we understand certain things about development and how children develop and what are the kind of norms within the typical range of things. And parents don't know that, right? It's something that you don't just naturally come to. So using your teachers as a sounding board would be another one. So when you're really kind of, not sure where to go next, I would say, don't forget, of course, we always say, you can call your pediatrician, definitely call your best friend, call someone like us at Work and Play, but don't forget to put your teacher on the list, because teachers know your kid and they have such a unique lens on your child that you wouldn't have, even like that you don't see your child in a classroom setting. So they may have a different way of framing the behavior or a solution. So just definitely use them as a sounding board.
I mean, don't we all want to have like a camera and see what does my kid really do during the day? Like, I love it. We all love it when we get pictures or whatever, because it's like, how are they acting when I'm not around?
I love that. We're always saying in parent teacher conferences, when we describe kids, how many times the parent's face is looking at us like, are you crazy? That is not my kid.
Yes. I know our third grader, his teacher just sent like this video of them in music class doing a dance to Michael Jackson Thriller. And I was like, I can't believe he's all up in the front, like doing all the moves, so outgoing. Because he can be a little bit shy sometimes, but it's so fun to see, like, just, it's like them becoming, like a little, like, self-sufficient, just like he doesn't need me there in school, obviously at third grade.
Of course. Yeah. And that is a big part of school, like having that autonomy, like this, they're becoming their own little person. Right. So even in preschool, it's something. And I always tell parents when I'm, saying, oh, he's such a great help at cleanup time, or she's such a helper when someone's sad, and they're so shocked by it. And I'm always like, well, pat yourself on the back, because
Yeah.
that is a big win when your child knows what to do in school. And even if they fall apart at home, then you're doing your job, because that's what you want them to do, right? Like home is the place to test the limits and blow off steam and, really push it. And school really isn't the place for that. So, I think that's always a good thing, but parents are always shocked. Like, well, how can you help? How can I get them to clean up
at home? I know. What do I need to do? What special cleanup song are you guys playing?
I hate to break it to you. It doesn't work at home. I've tried.
I mean, that is so true, because oftentimes when we have meltdowns, I'm like, would you act like that in front of your teacher? And I probably shouldn't say that, but it's like, that's how I feel sometimes, because especially with my oldest, I get such glowing reports, like from when he was 2 till now, just like the best reports, and, just epic meltdowns at home. But I know that's normal.
Yes. And good job. See, you're doing a great job. Pat yourself on the back for that one.
Oh, but the meltdowns, they are intense. Sorry, you froze a little bit.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, did I? Am I back?
Okay, you're back.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. What are our next tips?
So, this is a big one. And I know as a teacher and as a mom, so I have 3 children myself. None of them are in preschool anymore, but right now I'm in that crazy time when I have a child, and I have my 3 children, and they're each in a different school. Okay. So
how old are your kids?
So I have a 14-year-old who's a freshman in high school. I have a almost 13-year-old who's in 7th grade. And then I have a 4th grader who's 9.
Okay.
So I have a boy and then 2 girls. And I will say that I'm definitely very guilty of not reading everything that comes home. Okay.
Oh, me too.
So much information, so many signups and newsletters and expectations and whatever it may be. And I have to say, like, that is one of the things that is important to do, is to tune in a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and as a teacher, I mean, I try, and I think if there are teachers listening, I'm sure you do this too. And if you don't, try to do it, because parents right now are so taxed, right? Like, people are working from home. They're, shuttling kids, getting used to being back in school, trying to get, back to some normalcy. And parents are just fried. I mean, right? I mean, we're just fried. And teachers are too, by the way. Like, this coming out of, it felt like the summer was nothing, because we were so wiped out from the year before, and now we're back. And what I would say is I try to always front load everything I send out with just like bullet points. Like, these are the highlights. If you're a parent who loves to read this stuff, there's more below.
Yes.
So, anytime any teachers out there that are listening, we can do that for parents. I take that as a parent myself as a gift.
I love it.
But also just knowing what things you need to pay attention to, right? Like, I know that teachers in my schools have websites, and I could go to them and get tons of information. And, I typically don't. I do trust my teachers and say, like, okay, if I need to go there and do that extra work with so-and-so, they're gonna, tell me. But, knowing what you need to pay attention to is important. So reading some of the stuff, I guess, would be a tip, because I get it. It's super overwhelming. But that is one of the best ways that we have to communicate with each other. So anytime we can do that, tuning in a little bit, and that's not to give any parent guilt here, because I am 100% feel so guilty. I actually set aside a time on Friday nights when I try, I'm like, my husband happens to work nights, so I'm fine on a Friday night. And I'm like, all right, this is when I'm going to do it. I'm just going to go through all these emails, and I'm going to delete the ones I don't know. I'm going to write down the stuff I didn't do. And we're going to just put this week to bed. So if you can find a time to do that too, I think that's a good tip. Of weeding through all the stuff, because there's always something that has to be returned, or a survey, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I was just listening to someone talk about this, and says she does it on Sunday nights. Like, pick your night to do it. It sounds nice. I never can get organized enough to do it, and I just saw some thing floating around Instagram that was like, I just want to make an announcement that I'm quitting my full-time job to focus solely on reading all the communication from my kids' schools.
I've seen that too. And it feels like that, honestly. It can feel that way. So, I always say like less is more, teachers. And I know, and I'm a wordy teacher. So I'm like always trying to condense because I get it. Parents are fried. It's too much.
I know. I'm trying to figure out like this way to be like involved enough but not too much, like not overwhelming for the teacher or my kid, but like involved enough that the teacher feels supported and my kids feel supported.
I know. And that's the key. That's the sweet spot. So if you can do that or just work towards it. I mean, I don't know that anybody's going to do that every single day, but having that kind of that mentality, I think is a great first step because that's going to help everybody, right? Because if you feel connected with your school and you're connected with your child, obviously it's going to make everything better. You have to have like even just a little bit of, information and investment into that. It really does help. And I'm a parent who's never around. I mean, I can never do drop off. I can never do pickup. So it's like I always miss the first day of school. It's those kind of things that get tricky. And I know a lot of working parents are in the same boat. So, doing what you can and figuring out how to still feel like you're not totally checked out from it. Find what works for you. I think that's great advice.
It's hard though. Like you said, a lot of working parents are in that same situation. But I mean, unless you have a job that you have to be at, like you're a teacher, you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you're a lawyer, you have a job where you have an exact time, you always have to be there. But a lot of people do have a little bit of flexibility where they can do those morning drop-offs like at the first day of school and stuff, which is really nice. And I just want to say, don't take it for granted if you can do that because people like Amy can't.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. I mean, and it's great if you can, and I think it's a great thing, but not everybody can. And, I have to say, like, find your village. Like, that's another thing as far as like working with your school, because, there are times when I have to just call in a friend and say, can you help me? Can you be there at the Halloween parade and take a picture of my little one? Like, can you be there from, and we have to have each other's backs. And so I think finding your village in that way to connect with your school really helps too. And knowing who you can go to, I always have at least one or two people in each of my kids' classes that I know I can text late at night and say, oh, did I miss the field trip thing?
Yeah.
Like, did I forget? Like, did that already pass? Did I pay my dues? Did you do that? Like, having that person, that connection. And the older your kids get, the harder it is to have that person. I'm like scanning the list saying, well, I don't know these people.
Yeah, they're all busy too. I mean, it's hard. I was so proud of myself because they're doing a pumpkin patch trip next Wednesday. And today was the last day to get the money in and the permission slip signed. And I turned it in. I was so proud of myself because usually I'm like the annoying parent that's doing that like day of, like, oh, can we still turn this in?
Me too. That would definitely be me. I have to say my children know that about me.
Yeah.
And so now at this point with my older one, all of them actually, even my 9-year-old, she'll say like, don't forget, there's a book fair. I'm like, thank you. We'll do that. But, I think there's something to that, right? Like we're taking care of each other. They know that I will help them when they need it, and they will help me when I need it. So,
my oldest too, they had school pictures the other day, and they were freaking out about me not filling out the order form. And my oldest thought that if I didn't fill it out, he wouldn't get to be participating in the pictures, which some kids would be like, yes, I don't have to do it. But he was so worried that if I didn't send that form in, that he wouldn't get his picture taken for the yearbook, I think. And I assured him, I was like, trust me, these photographers give you ample opportunity to pay them money for these overpriced pictures.
All these packages.
And then they also they're joining a little Boy Scouts crew here. And they've reminded me to order their uniforms about 4 times. And he's like, I want to sit next to you and see you click send.
I can relate to that one. A lot of us can. I mean, I know some people have that talent, that gift that they get that stuff done. I am not that person, but I do get by. So, and so do you. So that's, good on us.
We're okay. We're teaching these kids to be resilient when they don't get things right away. No instant gratification in the Hine household.
I know. Mine either. Don't worry. You are not alone in that.
So should we move to balancing screen time? And I'm interested in this topic with the young kids because, well, and you can talk about it with older kids too, because you teach young kids, but you have older kids. And man, we have tried very hard to limit screen time, mostly because I noticed, especially with video games. And by the way, listeners, we're going to have a specific podcast about gaming and having a healthy relationship with that with kids soon. So, um,
Great.
but that's one of the reasons I limited it, because I just noticed a behavior shift that it just wasn't good. So, I'm just curious your thoughts on screen time and these littles even having screens as a
Mm-hmm.
teacher.
Absolutely. So, we actually just, Emily and I just did a blog post on this recently. So there's a lot in there on our website on Work and Play. But so this is a situation where I always tell parents, this is a really personal decision.
Yeah.
It really is. Okay. So that's the first thing. And as a teacher, as a mom, doing Work and Play parent coaching, like, I have no judgment on this, and every family is going to be different. Even amongst Emily and I, we've done it totally differently, how we handle screens. And it really, for me, it goes back to knowing yourself as a parent and knowing your children. Okay. So the first place to start with screens, even with littles, is thinking about what purpose are they serving here.
Mm.
Right. So when I had really teeny tinies, and I had my first two were only 16 months apart. And so to like survive and get a shower, yeah, I would turn on Sesame Street, or I would, let them look something on my phone. Like, I would say, like, here, sit here. I can see you from the shower, and I'm in the shower. It was a survival thing. Right. Like, this is going to get to be able to this quick, whatever it may be. So it served a purpose. So I guess my first thing would be to say, know yourself as a parent, know what they're serving. So if they're serving a purpose, it's helping you be a parent that can be happier and more productive and, kind of be able to be the parent you want to be. Use them how you feel
Yes, I love
appropriate.
that.
Right? So don't discredit that. Like we always say, we're always thinking about the kids and what impact it has on them. And there definitely is a lot of, there can be positive and negative impacts of screens on children, young children to old children. But, it's important to not take us out of the equation as parents, right? We're in a generation now where these children are 100% going to be around screens, right? There's no avoiding it. They're getting them in school. They're getting them sent home, right? Like I know in our district, there's, they have Chromebooks, and they're reliant on these. And I get it. They had to be. That's how we had school over the last 18 months or so. But, we can't avoid them necessarily, but I think really knowing as a parent where you stand on it and how they can serve your family is the best place to start. From there, if you decide you're going to have screens, then you want to really create a routine and structure. And for some families, and again, no judgment, that the limits can be really wide open and really great. And, for me, I can say I was definitely, my kids would tell you, like, the strict mom. Like, they didn't have phones for a long time. I haven't let them get social media till they go to high school. And sidebar, my son's in high school now, and he's like, I don't even want it anymore.
Oh, really?
But let me tell you, like, my seventh grader is like, give me the social
And
media.
that's the girl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we just haven't done it. And I'm going to just want to, you have to come up with your structure. And again, that was me. Like I knew myself as a parent, what I could deal with and what I could monitor. I'm not home all the time. I can't be with them all the time. I do need them to have phones. I need them to be able to communicate with me because I'm like I said, I'm not always at pickup. I do want them to be able to tell me, what they need and where they are, especially, this is my middle schoolers and high schooler, but I've had structures all along, even when they were little, knowing what worked for me as a parent, probably may not work for my, my neighbor, my best friend, whoever it may be, my sister. We all are going to have really different takes on what's going to work for our families. And so really, honestly, we have to think it through. I mean, that's the thing about screens. I mean, there's so many ways this can go wrong. We have to think through what our structures are, how it's serving us, and what our structures are and our routines are. So think it through as a parent and think it through for your child. Now, I have one of my children really cannot, once she has a screen, she can't separate from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just a really hard thing for her. Like it's just limits, timers, you name it. For her temperament, it's just not her it's always going to be a battle. And so, knowing your kid and knowing what they can handle should be taken into account too. So even with little ones, knowing what they can handle as far as, is it okay for them to be going through, like, especially YouTube kids? Like for me, like this child, because she couldn't get off of it and it was like a constant stream, I just said, we can't do that for you. Like, we're just going to take it away. And it changed her whole use of screens. It changed the tone of our household. But that's her as a child, right? Some kids can handle it. Some parents can handle it. And for us, it just wasn't the best choice. And so I want to empower parents, and we talk about empowering parents so often, to really trust your gut on this. Like, you don't have to do what, other people are telling you have to do. You don't also have to try not to give in to your kids. I mean, I can tell you, if you were to interview my daughter, she would say, I am ruining her life for some of the stuff I don't let her do.
I'm sure she would at that age.
But I really do believe that these are the right choices. And honestly, sometimes I've made mistakes, and that's something to keep in mind too. When you decide on something and then you see this isn't working for me, or it's not working for my child, it's not working for my family, you can do a do-over, start over. Like, yeah. I think sometimes parents think like, oh, but I already gave them that privilege. They are allowed to go on YouTube, or they are allowed to play that video game. And it was a mistake. And I think being really upfront and honest with your kids and saying, you know what, I made a mistake. I thought we could handle this, and I can't. And I'm seeing it's my job to keep you safe and healthy, and this isn't keeping you healthy. It's not the best thing for you. And I need to take a step back and apologize. I've done that with my children and said, I'm really sorry. This was a choice. Sorry, but we're going to do a do-over. We're going to start over and come up with new structures because this one isn't working for us. And I think with screens especially, it's important to keep tabs on that. Like I said, the thing where using it as kind of like my babysitter while I took a shower when they were little, I don't need to do that anymore. So at a certain point, like, your kids just like see you getting ready to get on a work call or get in the shower, and they're like, give me my screen. Like, it's almost like you've conditioned them, right? To like, yeah. So, knowing, does this routine still serve us? Is it necessary? Do I need this still? And really being, not getting too caught up in those routines that don't work for your family anymore, is a big one too.
Yeah. And I mean, and I like the revisiting thing. I think that that's just a really good point in life and in parenting in general. It's like, it's okay to go back and say, like, I don't believe or think what I once thought. And I don't think that that's going to serve our family like I once thought it would. Or maybe, here's an example, and we'll talk about this more when we have our gaming person on. It's like, maybe you said, I don't want you playing Minecraft because it's addictive and it's just too much. Like, you're always on it. But maybe you can look for reasons why it can be okay. And then, like you started this part of the conversation with, set the boundaries and the expectations, and then go from there. So, absolutely. I mean, I think revisiting it in either direction is an important thing to do. And I just wholeheartedly believe that with life in general. Like, just because you said something 5 years ago or you believed something 5 years ago doesn't mean you believe it now. And that's okay. And it's probably a good thing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, we always go back to too, that it is important to just check in and see, like, what are my rules? Why do I have this rule? Like, is this rule an okay rule? Like, do I still think this? Like, saying that over and over again. And it doesn't really, like Emily and I always say too, like, it doesn't matter what your rules are as long as you have them and you stick to them. So, and if they're one that you again and again let them bend, get rid of it. It's not a real rule. It's just confusing, and I think that happens a lot with screens where, there was a time too where I'd be like, you can't watch TV till after your homework's done. That ended up not working for my kids. Like, I'm not always home right when they get home. And like, they're like, they want to wait for me. They want to see me. And I'm like, fine, 30 minutes, you can watch TV. And I always, people laugh at me for saying TV, but I actually do still have a TV. I don't know, people don't always, but I like it because I'm like, they're not really just right in front of me.
I know, I have less guilt about the TV.
Hear what they're listening to. Like, for me, I'm, call me old fashioned, but I still like a TV.
I'm the same way because I just feel like they tinker around more with other stuff when the TV's on. Like, they'll be watching Paw Patrol and they're like playing Paw Patrol as well. And when their face is in a screen, it's just a much different, I don't know. I mean, they do zone out on the TV as well sometimes, but I do notice that my kids will watch and then they'll go get toys and they'll do a little bit of both. So I just feel like in some ways they're still being a little bit creative when they're when the TV's on.
It's like there's a little space between them and the screen, I feel like.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Okay, did you have any other tips for that?
Yeah, so I guess I would just, make sure you give yourself some grace in the moment. Like mistakes are going to happen. If you're going to decide to have screens, things are going to happen that you didn't want to have happen. I mean, it's just inevitable, right? Like they're going to see something you don't want them to see. They're going to do something you don't want them to do. You're going to get in over your head at some point and say like, wow, this really got away from me. Like I thought I had my hands around this. I
Yeah.
don't. It's happened to me. It's happened to friends. It's happened to just about everybody. And just knowing, that's okay. Just give yourself some grace and say like, okay, let's see what happened here, like where we went wrong, and let's revisit it. Just really being aware of it, right? Because these screens are really powerful, like especially if you're giving them an iPad or a tablet and you're or giving them a computer or even handing them your phone. I find like that is the biggest one that worries me sometimes, because my kids will just grab my phone sometime and be like, oh, I want to find this. Like, I want you to order this, or I just want to show you this one thing. And, my phone doesn't have all the restrictions theirs would. So, and, whether it's grandma's phone or an aunt's phone or a babysitter's phone, like things can get pretty serious pretty fast. I mean, just being aware and giving yourself grace in the moment that mistakes are going to happen, and knowing that that is one of the risks of doing it, of having screens around and putting them in their hands. As much as there are so many amazing benefits to it, I do think that there are definitely some slippery places and dangerous places for kids. So just being aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been so frustrated sending because they send the computers home with the kids now, and I'm like, I kind of have to get over my frustration because I'm like, Lindsay, it is 2021. Like, your third grader should know how to use a computer.
No.
Like it's not the worst thing ever, but we do try to like limit it on weekends and things like that. But yeah, I've had to like because we've been so anti iPads and things like that I've had to try to like really reconcile with the whole situation. Like it's actually okay that my kid's on a computer. Like,
Yeah.
Beyond all the restriction talk and all that, like, and we need to be careful with what they're watching. Like, it's not a bad thing that he's on his computer, like at certain times.
Absolutely. And that's, exactly like what we keep coming back to too, is that these kids are going to have to be a little computer savvy.
I mean, we
that's
use
actually
computers.
right? Yeah. Like, I mean, this is like something you have to teach them how to do. It's like you teach them how to put on their bike helmet, look both ways. Like you have to teach them how to use these tools because they're going to be put in their hands at some point, whether you do or not.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Okay, Emily, by the way, you guys sent me the cutest little like package from Work and Play of activities for my kids, and we had so much fun with them, and they were simple, but I never would have put them together myself. And you guys ship out that stuff, right?
We do.
People
we
can
do.
order those little play kits.
Yeah, you can. And we do phone calls, we do, parent coaching, we do all kinds of different services for people trying to just meet them where they are. We're starting doing parent talks where we talk to parent groups and talk at schools. We're starting to work with teachers. So we're really excited about that because we're really hoping to continue this idea of partnership with parents and teachers, and helping teachers build that connection between home and school in a really positive way, and being really mindful about that. So, it's just lots of exciting things where we're changing and expanding in many ways.
That's so exciting. I'm so happy for you guys. Congratulations for taking the leap and going all in with it.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, Amy, what is something professionally or personally, you're doing it, I guess, a little bit professionally, right? That you would like to do that you haven't done yet?
Yeah. So for me, like I've been a teacher for so long and I love being in the classroom, but I really am pushing myself to get out of the classroom and, try to make these connections. Starting Work and Play was one of the first big step in that. This is something that Emily and I have been talking about for years and years and years. And just finally doing that and doing things like this and really connecting with people. So, making that my focus and just being really aware of the opportunities that come my way. I think as a teacher and any working parent would say, you get so kind of in the zone of working, of taking care of your kids, of doing all the things that you're supposed to do. And sometimes for me, I'm just not even aware that like, oh, well, I find this really interesting and intriguing, and really seeing myself as someone who's willing to take a risk and try something new. That's really what I want to do. I mean, I know that's a really vague answer, but I also, I feel really strongly that I want to be aware of the opportunities that are in front of me, especially at this point in my career, to get out of the classroom a little bit and still teach because I love teaching. It's just my favorite, but I need to expand this part of myself, like listening to this, this is where I'm being pulled to. So I need to listen to that voice more.
Yeah, I love that. Like following where you are curious. If you keep being curious about it and you keep thinking about it, follow that. Figure it out. What's the best, most recent book you've read?
Oh, well, I've just actually revisited a book that I've read before, and I've I've been, maybe because I have two girls who are the ages that they are, but I've revisited the Lisa D'Amour books. I don't know if you've read those. I reread Untangled,
Uh huh.
and Under Pressure. Those are both great books, and actually I read them through my work actually as like a professional reading. She actually came and spoke to our school,
Oh, cool.
but it actually helped me with my son too. So don't limit it to just being for parents of girls. It actually was really helpful when I was thinking about my son too. But those are her books, and even her talks and her podcasts. They really, and I think she writes for all different publications, really do speak to me as a parent, and they help me kind of start conversations even with my partner, saying like, oh, I haven't been thinking about this. Like I heard this or I read this, or, we're going into this new phase and we need to really focus in on this. Right. So her books have been super enlightening to me as a parent.
I know my best friend is reading that book, Untangled. Her daughter is 10. So,
Yeah.
and
But I'm
she's,
telling you, it's great for boy moms too. So
I
don't,
know. I'm reading 14 Talks Before 14.
oh, that's a great one.
Have you read it?
You have. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to interview Michelle. So
Oh,
I'm excited about that. It's a good one.
great. Perfect.
My oldest is 9, and I feel like I'm in a good spot to read that book. And I'm already feeling like I'm using some of the ideas she gives for like conversation starters and stuff.
Right. I do. And I think like a lot of times, and with my takeaways from books like that too, it just kind of, it reframes my thinking, right?
Yeah.
I'm not great at follow through. I'll tell you, like I've bought like
Right.
different workbooks and different, journal.
Same.
I'm not great at that stuff, but I do know that like I go back to it, right? Like it does kind of, if I give myself time to like reflect on it and think about it in my own life, like I do go back to it and it does change how I do things. So, I think it's important to listen to those different perspectives too.
I agree. And I read them, and sometimes it's the most basic stuff. And I'll like repeat it back to my husband. He's like, yeah, well done. I'm like, yeah, well, you're not thinking about it until you read it, right? Like, I'm just like, you really think about these really basic things, and then it just makes more sense. Like, everything makes more sense. And I
Yeah,
don't
and
want
it's
to just go
what
through the
phase you're in,
motions.
right? And we go in so many different phases with our kids. They're always changing and growing, and we're changing as parents. So things hit you differently. Like that's why I like to reread books that really speak to me, because I think like I'm going to take something different away this time, and I always do.
For sure. Do you have a kid's book you recommend?
I've been reading lots of books, obviously, in my classroom. We recently were reading the classic Chicken Soup with Rice. We love that when we're talking about the months. So if you have little ones, that's so fun. And there's a song that goes with it. So we love that. Emily and I always do that. There's a book called Going Up by Sherry Lee, which is amazing. My class really responds to that. Any of the Pete the Cat books, huge hits. Yeah. And with with big kids, I find I'm a big proponent of letting them read whatever they want, whether it's like the cereal box or the newspaper or, a chapter book. And so it's funny, I was thinking about this, like, what would I recommend? And I was asking my 9-year-old, and she was like, Mom, like, I don't know, like read anything. Just tell them that. Read anything. Read anything. I agree.
I keep thinking I think it was Michelle in her book, there was a suggestion to get like a subscription to like a sports magazine or something. And I don't want to do it just to do it and to push it on him. I want to do it if he'll actually read it. So I have to figure out a way to make it sound exciting. I don't know.
Right. I know. Well, it is funny now. I can tell you, like over the last several years, like, when I'm teaching 3-year-olds, so we talk about the letters and things. And sometimes whenever we get to N and we show them a picture of a newspaper for something that starts with N, they're like, they have no idea what it is. Zero
I mean,
idea.
I haven't got a newspaper delivered
I
me
know.
to
And
me
so
as
I
an
always
adult.
think about
Yeah.
that. Like, what do my kids see me read as a parent? Like, I want them to know that I'm a reader too. So whether I'm reading a book or if I'm reading something on my, device saying like, oh, I'll talk to you in a minute, I'm just reading the newspaper, like whatever it
I
is,
know they don't know. Like I know
No.
I think about that a lot because my husband doesn't do social media, but he reads articles on his phone all the time. And yeah, it's almost like you want to clarify to your kids what you're doing. Because I read half of my books, regular books, and I read half of them on the Kindle. And when I'm on the Kindle, I don't want them to confuse it and think I'm just scrolling through my phone. Like I'm reading a novel here.
Yeah, it's tricky times in that way. I'm telling you, they don't know.
Yeah. All right, Emily, what's your, oh wait, do you have a trip that you have gone with your kids or that you recommend?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I really, I'll tell you, like we don't take a ton of trips because of our work life. Like my husband is a chef, so
Oh, that is tough.
schedule is a little tricky, and I'm a teacher, so my schedule's a little tricky. But I would say like any trip, whether it's a day trip or a weekend, or we go to the beach every summer with our family, like anything we can do to just really stop and reconnect and find something to do that we can just be together, even if they're like kicking and screaming with the kids, like we always say, like, let's go take a hike. And my big kids are like,
I know they
do that.
complain.
And it's like, should we bring the dog? Should we not bring the dog? It can be really stressful getting there. But I think anything that we do that we really take the time to just stop and be together, especially as my kids are getting older, is what I always go back to in my mind. And some of those are really simple, super quick trips to the beach for the day, or, whatever it may be. So I don't have one in particular, but we always go to the beach. If I have a choice, I'm going to take my kids to the beach, any beach.
Do you, as your kids are getting older, your youngest is 9, that's the age of my oldest. Do you get nostalgic or like sad teaching 3-year-olds knowing that like that season of life has been done for a while?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not one of those people that tells people, oh, soak it up. It goes so fast. Even though I think it,
Yeah.
I never liked hearing that as a parent
Right.
myself.
Right.
So I try not to say that, but it is true. Like I am sad that it's over, but I also know that like, I don't want to do that again. So there's like kind of the bittersweet, like I did that. I'm fine with that.
I love that you just know that. That's a very good feeling.
Yes, it's a good feeling. I'm good. So when we got out of the toddlerhood, when I was teaching threes when I had it. My oldest was 3, where he's like probably 3.5 when I started. And so I've always, had years and years and years where I was teaching threes, and I had a 3-year-old at home.
Gosh.
And it was a lot. So I'm happy to be out of that phase.
I'm dealing with your kids all day and my kids when I get home.
Yes.
I've always wondered that about the teachers that are walking through it and teaching all day. I'm like, man, you guys are the real heroes.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Some days people are like, how do you do it? I'm like, I'm not sure I do every day, but I try.
I'm here physically.
I'm doing it.
Well, what is your last message to leave with the audience today?
Something Emily and I always say is that parenting is messy, and that's what we go back to so often. And just remembering that like it's okay to have things go off the rails and to not know stuff and to feel like you are really, quote unquote, messing it up, because that's part of the journey. And so I just always am wanting to tell parents and reassure parents that this is part of the process, and there's always room for improvement, and there's always room for, giving yourself a pat on the back. So try to balance that and just accept that, it's not always going to be neat and tidy. It's not always going to be emotionally, easy, but just to stick with it and to find people that, you really can rely on and to talk to and talk things through, because this parenting thing was not meant to be done alone. And it's so hard in this time that, it can be so isolating. I mean, we're so busy. There's so few ways to connect sometimes. If you're working and taking care of your children and, in the car, or you're, only connecting through text messages, it can feel really super isolating. And so just owning that it's hard, but also knowing that if it is hard, you're probably doing it right. And just trying to be in that moment. Just be kind to yourself, because it can be really hard to be a parent today.
I love Emily's advice to me when I talked to her about moving. She was like, call your friends, like pick up the phone and call your friends. Cause she said that she had been through that as well. And yeah. I know you and her talk all on the phone a lot, and at least one of my friends, we've been really good about picking up the phone and talking. And one thing I will say about that is if you are too busy to pick up the phone and do like 20 minutes a couple times a week, you're probably too busy. Like there's probably something to delete.
Yeah. And you know what? And you might be avoiding something, right? Like, oh, I don't want to talk to that friend. She's going to tell me something I don't want to hear.
Yeah.
Like you need to slow down, or I want to see you, like you got to take a break, or, and sometimes we just aren't ready to hear that. So I know, you're right. Emily and I talk a lot. I talk to my sister a lot. I talk to my mom a lot. So it's like people that you can rely on, that keep you honest and kind of know you and can say to you, like, this is a lot right now. This sounds like a lot. We all need that. It's because it is. Geez, it is. It's a lot.
I was in the worst mood on Monday, like just rotten, or maybe it was Tuesday, I don't know. And then the next day, or that night, I ended up calling my friend and we talked for 40 minutes. And then the next day I had the best day. And I'm like, I think that those two things, like really, I think that had a lot to do with it. And I don't,
Yeah.
I can't like prove that. It was probably a hormone shift as well. But like, I know that it was helpful. And so, yeah, I mean, even if your friend isn't one to pick up the phone and call you, don't be offended. Pick up the phone and call them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's connecting is so important, especially when you're a parent. I mean,
It's lonely.
It's imperative. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And you need somebody outside of your house.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Amy. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.